Welcome to Prepare For Takeoff. I'm the creator and host, Terry L. Cyrus. We're the podcast dedicated to amplifying Black excellence. Every week, we sit down with a proven professional or rising entrepreneur. And this week, we're sitting down with writer, songwriter, playwright, Cassandra Trinity Anderson. Cassandra, what's going on?
What's happening? How you doing, Terry? What's going on?
I'm good. As they say, blessed and highly favored.
Blessed and highly favored. The favor ain't fair either, but let's roll with it.
I'm going to have to run with that. The favor ain't fair.
But we're going to roll right on with that favor, though.
I might put that on a shirt.
All day and all night. Thank you for the favor. Woo!
Absolutely. Well,
Yes.
Look, allow us to give you your much-deserved virtual flowers, give you all of your praise for all of your accomplishments. You've been in this business for an extended period of time like myself. And we want to get into all of those facets and kind of how it started. And just back to your beginnings, I know you're Baltimore's own, and that's a story in and of itself. So I want people to understand that when they see people and they're shining, a lot of people whose reality that isn't currently, they're like, okay, that could never be me. But they don't realize that a lot of times people like myself and you, we've all had humble beginnings. We've watched other people with humble beginnings. And those people didn't start on the screen. They came to the screen, but they came from somewhere. So that's what we want to do. We want to kind of unpack your journey and just give our viewers and listeners some inspiration on how, they can get their shine on and grow up to be like Miss Trinity.
Amen, amen. I'm here to work with it all. Let's go.
So, as I mentioned, you're from Baltimore. What was that like growing up in Baltimore?
It was actually wonderful. I mean, I had a really, really great experience. It was really funny because I was straddled between two worlds. One world was like, I had a granny. Everybody had a granny.
Everybody.
I had a granny that lived in the inner city. And at that time, we wouldn't call it the hood or anything like that. People worked hard, but they just weren't rich. But then at night, when my mom picked me up, we were the only African-American family in a Jewish community. So I lived in between two worlds. And I really loved that experience because I think it gave me the ability to just see people at face value and get to experience just different points of view and at an early age. So I got to really watch, hardworking people that may have been like three people in one room, 3 or 4 people in one room. And then to add to that, then I had the country because for the summertime, sometimes my mom would drop me off and just kind of forget when she was rolling out the back of the what you call driveway, that she was going to leave me down there for 3 weeks to pick cucumbers. So I had the inner city, the country, and the predominantly white neighborhood that I grew up in. So I had all of these worlds that I think really helped me as a writer because I'm very observant. So I had a great, great childhood. I had great friends. Please don't let it be a snow day. You know them trash can tops that you get inside and slide on down the way? And I was always very resourceful. So I was always somebody that was starting groups and clubs. I mean, I was always just being inventive and had friends that would roll right along with me. So I had a good childhood for sure in Maryland.
I know there's a lot of people from Baltimore. I know Tupac, he spent some time there. Jada Pinkett, she's from there. I understand that you guys grew up together at some point in time.
Yes, we went to middle school together, and Jada ran for secretary. I ran for 8th grade student council president, and I won. And I had a girls group, and this was before seatbelts. Now you remember the seatbelts that we have now? There was no seatbelts when we was growing up.
Right, your mom just was like, they put their hand up so that you wouldn't go forward.
That was
the seatbelt.
There was no seatbelt. So I was the house that you came over and you had a bunch of girls. I had maybe 20 something girls in the crew, and we would pile in that same car and go skating. Because, skating was the big thing too.
Mm-hmm.
Man, you had your little pom-poms on your skates. Jada was a part of that part of my life, and it was a great part. I mean, she was always a very talented individual, was very proud of her when she did her thing on Different Worlds. So proud, but not surprised. Because in Baltimore, we had just incredibly talented people. And you were never surprised because we always expected one another to do well and excel. I think that's what I really loved about Maryland. Now, don't let me get it twisted. I did have a couple of incidents where people follow you home and you got to handle them, or somebody try to beat you up on the corner. That's in certain places. I did experience.
Hold your hands.
Hey, because I hate to say, if you was kind of cute in any kind of way, you always had to get tried. So I was always
Hmm.
that one. But I was always the one that was going to finish it, unfortunately, for my mother, who had to come to school and be like, "Why are you in the office?" Because they started it. So I would just say that I just really, really enjoyed all of my experiences. I just and that was, I think the school that I went to, my middle school was like a melting pot. So we had a lot of diversity there, a lot of respect for one another, which I really enjoyed growing up. And I didn't realize how special that was. I mean, it's, till I went to California. And then when I moved back to the East Coast, I'm like, wait a minute. Each state can be so different. And Maryland was just that in between. You're going to have that crab feast. Everybody was just wonderful. I had a good childhood, very creative childhood.
You mentioned that you went to California. So what led to you moving to California?
So my mom moved a couple of different places before it landed us in California. She remarried, and so we moved to San Jose at first.
Hmm.
And then from there, I decided to stay when she came back east. And I decided to stay because I was going to write music. That's why, like everybody else, I'm going to write music. I'm going to live my dream. So I was like, I got to stay. I got to stay. So I
Hmm.
stayed.
I take it that that was something that you were able to kind of manifest, and you were able to write with some of the biggest people in the business. So talk us through how that came to be and what that experience was like.
Really, really exciting and kind of like an out of body experience in the sense to know that the little words I would put on paper as a kid and my little poems and my little lyrics would actually become songs. And so I had my first, I would say, real takeoff when Whoopi Goldberg's daughter decided to be a manager, and she managed my writing partner, who at that time, I was dating. And we got an opportunity to write for Black girls. And that was the first time where it was like, I got to really hear feedback that, you're a pretty good writer. And then it went on from there to, I met Butter at some point. He was new from Pittsburgh. And Butter's my husband, by the way. You didn't get there, but I just went there. And he was new out there, and we were all trying to find our way. And he needed writers for Dr. Dre, which at that time Dre had was stepping aside from Suge and was going on his own way to start his own company. As when I was with Dre, we had to come up with names, and Aftermath was what we ended up settling on. Dre had decided for the Aftermath album to do something different. In leaving the Suge connection, he decided he wanted to have R&B artists on the album, rap artists on the album. So we had, King T. We had new acts like um, Hands On was the girls group that I wrote for. And so it was just exciting for me because Dre was just, as a writer or a producer, you were going to go to another level being in his sphere of influence, because when you were at the studio, there was food at the studio. You know what I'm
Mhm.
saying? Like, there was food in the refrigerator at the studio. And for an artist that's trying to make it happen, it's like, oh, I can just grab the bread and the sandwich and the ice cream and all that. Oh yeah, we on another level. So Dre was a wonderful experience for me because that was the transition in between the Aftermath and him going to do another Chronic album. And I think he was, at that time, it was such a joy because after the Aftermath album took off, I actually went on tour. Butter and myself, and I was one of the only females. So I felt really honored to be representative of female writers out there at that time. And I remember being so proud that when people came to get our autograph while we were on tour, we went on a 13 city tour for the Aftermath album, which held Been There, Done That on there. And when people asked for my autograph, they were just like, wow, it's just so exciting to see a female in the group. And I was very well taken care of. Dre, made sure that I was very well respected. So I really appreciated that. It was my first time experiencing being paid on a regular basis. I was kind of on staff. And then I had the opportunity to actually be considered to write for a movie for him. So while we were on that tour, he would kind of give people opportunities. And this is the part, this is such a joy to talk about. Dre was really good at giving people opportunities. And one of the things he really blessed me with was, hey, I think I want to write a movie while I'm on this journey. And he said, who think they could, you know, and I was like, I'm in the studio, like, I'll give it a try. I had never written a film before. So I gave it a try. So not only was I on tour at the time for the hands-on song, I had 2 songs that landed on the album, which went platinum. But also during that time, I was hired to write for him as a screenwriter. And even though after that, after the tour and after we came off the tour, he went on and did The Chronic and I went my way and Butter went his way as well. The blessing I got from that was just such an opportunity because after that, of course, he went on to do his own film. But what I loved about that time with Dre was just him sharing his ideas, how he thought about things. And if he ever wants to dust it off, I think I still got it in the closet somewhere. I kept it to myself. I ain't tell nobody about the secrets in that movie.
He was able to see what I seen when I first met you and your husband and your son on the red carpet. I said, this is a star-studded family. And I was just blown away by your son. But we'll get into all of that later. But I think when people have it, it's on you. And it's on you because it's in you. And I think Dre, being the visionary that he is, he's able to see who has it on him. And
Wow.
I think the thing that he's driven by, similar to myself, is how can I pull that out of that person? I'm the same way. I want to pull it out of somebody. I want somebody to be the best version of themselves. That's why this whole platform is a joy to me because it allows me to help people amplify their embodiment of Black excellence.
It's funny that you say that. When I think about it, this was the part I was going to say, when Dre came in that studio, what you got? And that's something he trained me. Like, don't get ready. You got to be ready. So he trained me, as a writer, like you got to be ready. And so now it didn't matter that maybe we were on tour and everybody was going to a club and da 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 da. He would still come back to the studio. So Butter was smart. Butter would stay in the studio. And I kind of did the same thing too, because I realized the work didn't stop with Dre. And even though you may have been partying with him, he expected you as a professional to have your work together. So you had to sing on the spot. You had to do whatever on the spot. He had to picture and envision what it was you were trying to write. So I really appreciate you saying that because I was thinking to myself, well, he's really asking a lot. He really believes in me. And I mean, right there, he's like, I like that. And as soon as you got that, I like that. That means you passed. Because if you didn't pass, the security guard might just be on the step of record one, letting you know that your contract is a little bit over. You wasn't coming back in that day, so
right.
I thank him for that opportunity. I really do.
Yeah, and that work ethic, I'm sure that you picked up from him to be in a position where, despite I'm going to go out and kick it, I'm gonna touch the people because this is my fan base, but I have to go back and cook in the kitchen. As the good doctor that I am, and I got to cook up these hits, and I can't do it alone. I need my team to have that same mindset.
Right. And I respect him because he was like, but see, guess what? I'm Dr. Dre, not y'all. Y'all still, you know what I'm saying? And I respected it. I was like, man, you right about it. And anybody that got it twisted and partied too much, after a while you didn't see him at the studio anymore because you just had to be able to hang with his professionalism. And I really appreciated that.
So then after your work with Dr. Dre, where did your career take you?
After my work with Dr. Dre, well, it went so many different places. I did a couple of jingles for Pepsi, Be Young, Have Fun, Drink Pepsi. So that kind of began me writing a couple of jingles. That was exciting, having a commercial that was out where I actually got to write, sing, and do the little tagline for it. When you can do all of those things, that was very exciting. And then from there, I would say I got more into acting. So this was during the time when Chip Fields was the acting coach in LA and Kim Fields, and I forget the name of that studio, but boy, was all of us up in there. I'm telling you, everybody was in there. And it was a wonderful time because this is when the Fresh Prince was out. So I had an opportunity to work on set on the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air and Living Single. Those were exciting times to see all of those African-American shows and people doing their things. During that time, I was doing background acting. I got to star in a couple of music videos. This was during the time when I said people had the clothes on. This is when the clothes was still. This is when you was being paid as an actress. You know what I'm saying? And then after a while, I was like, hey, I think this is where I got to cut off right here. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
That was during the time when you could pay your bills, especially if you got the right casting director that thought highly of you. that was an exciting time because they were paying well. I was in what you call it, Montel Jordan's video, One for the Money, and boy, I'm not even gonna get into what happened with the Nate Dogg situation. Anybody that was on that video shoot knew that we was having a ball. There was golf carts everywhere, free food everywhere, beautiful girls everywhere, and then people got to stop fighting. Like, for real, the golf country club, please,
Right.
please, no, because when you were being hired at that time, that means you got 2 days amount of work. It was like, woo,
Mm-hmm.
you know.
Right.
So I was doing auditioning at that point, and I realized at some point, yeah, I think I'm gonna need to dust off some of my writing.
Mm-hmm.
And then somewhere in between there, Butter and I had ended up getting married, which was huge. And once we got married, I'm trying to figure out. I did so many things, but at some point, both of us being artists, as a wife, sometimes, you just give and take. And so, at this point, he had picked up with Tank. His career had gone on to Aaliyah, which I know you'll talk to him. So I might be a month in Australia, which was an incredible experience. So I think this began my journey of being an artist, but being kind of sat back just for a minute in observation, which was an honor to do, to watch my husband do his thing, watch other people do their thing while I was quietly writing scripts.
Mm-hmm.
you
Like
know,
on the low, cooking.
yeah, cooking, because you can't get ready, you got to be ready.
Right.
So I think during that period of time, and during just before my having our first child, finished a couple of movies and started working on my own album. And so those are the things I was doing. And then what I always love to do is work in the community. So during this time, my husband and I were working with at-risk youth in Watts in LA. So we were working on skits, and especially during that time, it was a lot of gang violence happening, to the degree that was during the time where it was a lot of drive-bys that were happening.
Mm.
So they were locking down schools, shutting down schools. Sometimes I remember having my oldest in a backpack because we would take him, because I thought, hey, if we don't care about some of these kids in these communities, who's going to care about my kid later on? This is kind of how I'm thinking about it. Until one day I was locked up in, I think it was Jordan High School. And I was like, listen here, I don't know what my baby in this backpack, I'm going to have to. But so we did 2 middle schools, 2 high schools, and, just service like thousands of kids in between his producing. Because during this time he was working for Ice Cube, working on some of those albums. So there was a lot of hosting, because a lot of artists that he worked with may have kids, and I always wanted kids to feel welcomed and not, you just don't want to be neglectful, especially in
Mm-hmm.
this industry. So I always wanted to make it a safe space for our artists to come through and do what they needed to do. At this time, I started serving a lot at church. I was going to Faithful Central Bible Church, where Bishop Kenneth C. Alma was the pastor, and serving a lot in like the drama ministry and with the youth. At one point, Kirk Franklin was our youth pastor along with Davin. And so we had done a couple of films there, a lot of talented kids in the church, because you're in LA. So you've got a lot of kids. They're also auditioning. And I think at that time, my mindset shifted to really wanting people that wanted to make it, for them to really think about what they wanted to make. Because
Right.
I've been in the industry for a minute now, and I started to realize that if you don't have a goal, or if you don't have a boundary, even, it can go in so many different places. So just listening to a lot of voices. We really provided a safe space in our home for a lot of youth conference stuff at our house. We did a lot of camp stuff where we invited industry professionals like Shanice Wilson, Kiki Haynes, Sonia Shepherd, a lot of people in the industry, but also some of them were a part of our church at the time. So it
Mm-hmm.
just so happens that they were also in the industry, but they also love the Lord. So we would just do a lot of fellowshipping, a lot of mentoring at that time. So a really amazing time.
All of those different things that you've managed to accomplish, and then the company that you were keeping, and then how you were able to jet set all over the world. You say it in such a very humble and subtle manner, but I understand just how huge that is, because there's plenty of people who are on the outside looking in, and for years, and they don't necessarily they don't have that same company that they're keeping, whether they're in LA, whether they're in New York, whether they're in Atlanta. And as I mentioned before, people see something on you because it's in you. And it's also in your husband. And that's why he was able to work with all those different people. And it wasn't limited to the work that he did with Dre. That went on to include Tank, and it went on to include Ice Cube and Aaliyah. And that led to going to different parts of the world, like Australia, working on Queens of the Dam. So talk me through what that was like from the little girl from B-More that had relocated to the West Coast, and now she finds herself down under, What was that like?
Wow. Well, first of all, let's do this. So my husband decided the Olympics was happening prior to us going to Australia with Aaliyah. She was shooting Queen of the Dam. You talk about work ethic. Oh, I respected her work ethic as well, because part of the reason why all the producers were going was because she was also shooting Queen of the Dam and working on her album. And so she wanted to shoot during the day and then come to the studio and record at night. And so we were there for a month. But I'm gonna tell you, it was amazing because Tank was one of the writers. J Dub was one of the writers. Oh my gosh, don't my brother's gonna don't kill me. I know my baby's name. It's gonna come back to me, brother. Don't even holler at me. I'm about to. Whoo! I feel like calling butter right now. But anyway, one of my dope brothers, he's playing drums right now for Patti LaBelle. He's amazing. But he and oh, Eric and Rapture, am I saying it right? It was just so Black was there. Wait a minute, Static. I don't know if you remember Static. Static, who wrote a lot of her hits, a lot of hits with Timberland. So we were all going. So it was absolutely amazing. I mean, this was during the time when you still carted all of your heavy musical equipment. People got it on their laptop right now, but it was such a joy. You knew you made it when they was going to take all your contraptions to Australia. So it was just, it was no worries, man. No worries in the down under. That's what they kept saying. We got to see some amazing sights while we were there because, like I said, she didn't come to the studio until it was in the evening. So you had all day to create. And I think it was really wonderful because the producers got a chance to challenge one another and keep each other egged on. I loved that group of producers because they competed, but it was in a friendly, like, man, I respect you type sort of way. So we were around just the best producers during that time. And I wouldn't trade it for the world. It was so, so special. But when she would come to the studio, she was so patient, every now and then you thought she was asleep because she would have her eyes closed. But I really felt like I learned something in terms of making sure you collect yourself. She had a way of, I felt, collecting herself before she went on the mic and did what she would do. So of course, to say the least, after coming back from Australia and us getting ready for the release of that album, after the Rock the Boat single came out, we were, of course, stunned and shocked of the accident because we had such high hopes for where she was going and all of the producers that worked. So it was definitely a tragedy to lose her at such a young age. But to this day, I think we all learned so much from her. And even though you're talking about me, I think all of us had that in common. I think that crew that went, we kind of vibed on that humble tip. You know what I'm saying? I think we all, I think maybe what you're saying might be true. I think the longevity may come in the humility, because at that time the record industry was so volatile. I mean, there were so many record companies that were buying one another. You couldn't find your royalties half the time. So I mean, you could be up and you could be down. So you might as well be consistent so that, you know what I'm saying?
Right.
If you got to go, you could come on back. You know what I'm saying? So you just stay humble and then you ain't got to regret nothing,
Absolutely. I mean, it was a roller coaster. And then you had no idea who was going to be on the roller coaster with you.
Yeah.
It could be somebody that went to school, college, whether they went to Juilliard, or they could be fresh out of prison.
Right. It's whoever was bringing it, whoever could consistently do it, and that's what I liked. I think that most of the people that we just listed are still in the game. We talk about it to this day. I think for us as a newly married couple, because we had just gotten married, It was amazing for us because now we're beginning to see the world on a whole different level, making that commitment with one another. And I think it really blessed a lot of the producers to see us roll like that. I understood, because I'm also an artist myself, what it takes. I'm not mad at the late night. I'm right with you in the studio, because I get it. So those are my brothers for sure. Man, that was a good time. Unforgettable for sure.
Yeah, it sounds like it. And I can imagine, and just as you mentioned, her passing, it touched all of us, whether you were in the business of entertainment or not, to lose such a legend at such an early age, and to happen in the manner in which it did. People in the industry, we still talk about it. We still reminisce, where were you when it happened? And you can only imagine where she would be at presently if she was still with us.
And
And
that's both in music and in film.
absolutely.
Because she was about to do another film. I think Romeo Must Die I think she was going to do what? The Matrix was what the next thing was. So, we all think about like what would have been like if,
Right.
but it just causes us to really treasure life, because
hmm
whether it's old or young, you just never know.
You never know. It's not promised. So
No,
that's why we have to make every day count.
yeah,
And not only for ourselves, but the people around us. And just
absolutely.
from what you're saying, it just sounds like you were a part of a phenomenal tribe, and the tribe is directly impacted by its vibe. I think that a lot of times people don't understand how important it is to succeed with others, to see those people, to have those experiences, to be around all those individuals. Like, what kind of impact did that have on you and how you proceeded with your career?
I think for me, I kept in mind, I think sometimes I would watch people, and there were other people that weren't the people that I mentioned, that were a little bit more balanced. I did run into the people that had the if I could just make it spirit. When
hmm
I make it, I'm like, when you make it what? I mean, so I had to grow into the idea that, you know what, after I've been silly and crazy and, in my 20s, I think I had to come to the conclusion at some point that I wanted to be a person of longevity, and I got to the place where I wanted to be proud of what I created after I got past being young and just wanting to so-called make it. Then it became, how do you have longevity and how can you be happy with what you're saying? And I think for me, I wanted to just explore a balance of not having that feeling of, oh, I'm so excited about my life when I'm up, and my life is trash when when I'm not making it. So that whole terminology I had to let go of, which is why I started to really enjoy community service. And I think it has to do with a lot of, don't let your left hand know what your right hand is doing,
hmm
so that you can remain humble, so that you can do things that have nothing to do with having a pat on the back. You do them sometimes for people that can't give you anything back, because there's a different type of reward. And I've learned in the space of time where it may not be lights, camera, action, I have then another reward where I may be working with some kids, or I may be in a place of service. And I have to say, sometimes that reward feels just as exciting to me as
hmm
the lights, camera, action. So I would say for a lot of people, the industry, there's a lot of rejection. So for example, I did a event um, in 2019 with the Central University. It's called Chasing Substance. And what I did was I combined Jamal Bradley. He's been an animator for like Penguins of Madagascar, Boss Baby, and Bruce Smith, who created the Proud Family, and my husband, of course, who was composer on the Proud Family. And they had did an animation together called Substance. And it was a 5-minute animation. It was one of the first all Black animations. And I was so excited to see, look at what they created. But the subject matter, Terry, was about things that we don't often see in Disney.
hmm
And the reason why that project became important to me, to what you're talking about, is because Jamal had to do it. He said, even though I'm at Disney, a lot of these stories of people that I grew up with who may have been traumatized by drugs or this type of thing, these stories won't get told, and they definitely won't get told in an animation type medium. I say all that to say, so I put together a conversation where I had your mental health specialists, along with people that may want to animate, along with people that may want to do music, to deal with the subject of rejection. Because what I'm trying to say is you have to develop in this industry more of who are you when nobody's looking? Do you still like yourself? And if, like in Bruce's case, when he talked about on the panel, because I wanted the college students to see that sometimes rejection is a part of your journey. And I think what's happening with a lot of creators back then and now is if they get too many no's, I hate to say it, they go develop an addiction or some type of thing where it's like, just chill out, just hold on. That's a part of the industry. Number one, when you're trying to, like my husband's now a composer for television and film, moving on from what is that you got several executives that's going to look at your work. And so one person might be like, that's fine. Another person, hey, I changed my mind on this. Da, 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 da. And you got to be able to be flexible. So I find that the conversation we were having with Chasing Substance was just the idea that as creatives, a lot of times we're more sensitive. And so we got to either be making sure we're working out. We got to make sure that we're taking care of ourselves, mind, body, and spirit when the lights are on and when they're off. Because unfortunately, if you wait till the lights come back on and you ain't did none of that work, you're going to be expecting so much from that light. You know what I'm saying? And sometimes it only may last for a hot second. And then, so I would say, like what you're saying, yes, there's a lot of contractual stuff. There's a lot of emotional stuff because there is rejection, sometimes you may not get booked for a part, maybe not because of you, but because you didn't look like the mother or the father that they were trying to cast you with. And sometimes people think that they're rejected when in fact they got to cast the whole thing, the mother, the father, everybody's got to look. So I try to be not only someone that has something to say in front of the camera, but I do care about the people having a long, healthy life behind the camera as well. That's very important to me. And I like to watch friends like I do love Shanice and Flex that have been together for a long period of time in the industry because it's hard for marriages to last. It's hard for families and people to keep their sanity in this business.
I think Jordan had a quote as it relates to kind of how you deal with adversity. Don't look at what happened to you. Look at what happened for you.
Ooh, that's good. That's good. I like that.
So you didn't, like Jay-Z said, it's not a loss, it's a lesson.
Yeah.
What can I learn from not getting that part? What can I learn from not being able to close that deal? And really what I've learned along my journey is you're really selling people on you, not necessarily your work, because business is done with people that people know. And so with that being said, relationships are everything.
Everything. It really is everything.
And I think a lot of times, especially people in today's age, they want instant gratification.
So
and they want to know why nobody is investing in their ideas, investing in their projects, because they're not investing in the relationship.
That's so good. That's so true. It's absolutely true. Like you said, when we were growing up, we love people for people. And I remember one time when we were living in LA at one point, it was all right in terms of, some things were working out really good if I do say so myself. So by the time we've gone from going to church and we're having meals together, when they finally get to your house, oh, why didn't you tell me? Tell you what? Like, what was I supposed to tell you? Why am I telling you anything? I'm still the same person.
Right.
And so whether it's a mansion, whether it's no longer a mansion, we're still the same people. And I think people lose sight of that. They think they need to be somebody else or do something else. Something that you said, I have two sons actually, and one of them is older. And one of the things we try to stress with him and my other son is take that extra time to love on people because like you said, it's not about what someone can do for you. And my sons are very thoughtful. They're very, very kind because you just never know what somebody needs. And that always concerns me because I'm just like you said, this is another thing that gets me when somebody just meets you and they start whipping out cameras once they know anything about your resume. I'm like, it's kind of weird because I still come from a place that used to be personal for me. When we're taking pictures or something, now people are just like, I'm like, I don't know you. Like, so I'm trying.
Right.
I'm working on it. I'm working on it. You know what I'm saying? Like, I'm working on that.
It's the Baltimore in you.
It must be because I'm like for real. Like hold on. Wait a minute, this is based on what? Now, if I'm talking about a project, okay, but it's like I don't know. It's just like you said, the transactional stuff. I think we're starting to know less and less about humanity with people. It's all little sound bites. They don't know what your endurance level is, what you've been through. They're speaking at you or to, I don't know. Whereas before, it's like we used to kind of, when we met somebody, we vibed out with one another to figure out who the person was or just enjoy. But like you said, people are so emotional. It's like, just because of this, and that, they expect something. And it's kind of like, well, I'm just kind of chilling because one thing my husband will say, he likes working with people he enjoys. We like being around people we enjoy. And when you get to a place in your life and in your career, you actually can kind of do that. You don't have to, just because somebody's talented. I always tell my kids, we all talented in this house. We
Right.
are, every last one of us are talented, right? So we don't get to have attitudes. We don't get to, you know what I mean?
Right.
Yeah.
So what was it like for your son? I know he performed at Carnegie Hall. I believe it was last year. So how did that opportunity come about and what was that experience like for him?
Okay, so he won an elite international music contest. It was suggested by his cello private teacher, who happens to be the first chair of the symphony, North Carolina Symphony. She saw him and she was just like, I really want to coach him, and which has been such a pleasure. But she said, I think he should enter this contest. And so he placed, which was surprising. It was his first contest, and he got an opportunity to play in the winner's circle at Carnegie Hall. So it was amazing on so many levels. And let me tell you, we filmed some of it and I haven't released any of it yet. We actually started kind of making a little documentary of it because at the time it was such an exciting adventure for us, but at the same time, and I don't know if you've heard about this, but we lost my husband's parents
Mm.
in a fire.
Oh, I'm sorry to hear that.
Was it like maybe 6 months? It was months before that. So the way we saw it was like he was an extension, both of our sons were, and our family is musical, of the musical legacy of his parents who also did music, kind of jazz and R&B, my husband's. And now we felt like he was carrying the torch, but now in a different genre, which is classical because he's a cellist. So we took it as an opportunity to honor them, to heal a bit. So while we were there, we went to the museum, we went to a lot of places as a family. We made sure we had some family members there. My mom and dad's, his mom and dad's sister came, and so we just fellowshipped about what would they think if they were here. We took it as a moment to really use it as a legacy moment to say, like you're saying, we all don't just arrive, we stand on somebody's shoulders. And so we definitely celebrated them in that moment and didn't just we celebrated him, but we made sure that we thought about how we all got here.
Hmm.
How is this kid playing a cello, playing classical music? Butter is this. My other son is also a producer, and mom and dad, and my mom does gospel. So we were celebrating our whole journey. And so he
Hmm.
allowed, through his diligence as a young man, allowed us to do that. So it was kind of like a watershed moment, both in a
Hmm.
happy and also in a sad way. So it meant a lot of things to us. Hopefully we'll be finishing that. Ime Alaquiva is the director. So we've actually started shooting. We need to actually finish that.
So you were able to honor your family's tree of creativity and to
Absolutely.
have it all culminate at Carnegie Hall is huge to say the least. So speaking of things manifesting to the stage, you're also a playwright. So talk me through how that came to be and this project that you have that's celebrating, our rich history in music.
Well, thank you. So I'm super excited. It was my first time. Like you said, Terry, you said us musicians, we're gonna get out there, we're gonna make something happen.
Hmm.
So that's what happened. I was listening to a lot of my sons are in a lot of different musical programs, and they get to celebrate Beethoven, they get to celebrate Mozart, and they are in one program called the United Streams of Color, where they play African American or African descent composers of classical music all throughout the year, not just Black History Month, which is great. But as I was listening through, some of the days, I kept thinking, I think we need to understand how amazing some of these composers are, not just for their music, but for their abolition, for their struggles in the 1700s. So I wrote about four musical abolitionists One, they did it. Searchlight did a movie on called Chevalier de Saint George, who was not only a champion fencer back in the 1700s, but he also was a composer, a boxer, and he not only was like an amazing violinist virtuoso, but he actually created a form of music that I think we still benefit from today. And I wanted to compare that with how we do music today, because I think we owe that to him. And I'll just say that Mozart really admired him to the
Mm,
degree that when we hear Mozart, we're actually hearing some of Chevalier. So let's
mm,
just do that. So this is a space much like the country where people say that African Americans may not belong in that space, when in actuality, if you look at the origins, yeah, we do. And yeah, we have a stake. And yeah, we were reigning in some of these territories, but a lot of that history sometimes is appropriated to someone else or erased or washed. And so I wanted to bring that to the forefront. Ignatius Sancho was one of the first voters in Britain of African descent. He worked for the Duke of Montague. And so these men were in castles and working with Marie Antoinette. And Chevalier actually became a colonel,
mm.
and created the first Black French battalion. So these men not only did music, but when the time arose to say, listen, I need to fight for justice, for freedom, to be able to exist as a person of color, they got busy with that as well. Sancho wrote letters, so he became a man of letters. Then we move on to America. Frederick Douglass. I was so excited to find out some different positions about Frederick. Frederick was a violinist that a lot of times people didn't know that he played violin, and that he inspired his grandson to go all over the world. Then we have Solomon Northup, who was a free, wrote 12 Years a Slave, and was a fiddler who was kidnapped, but wrote his autobiography. I had to ask myself this question: if they could come through slavery and a lot of the things they were going through, and they have all of these published works, I began asking myself, what is going on right now with a lot of us people? Do we have too much distraction on our hands? Are we not focusing? Because most of the people that I wrote about with these men, they were doing 4 and 5 things that, because they did it, we're able to look back and find where we should be now. Like, I'm looking at Frederick, and even though I'm so excited to celebrate Martin Luther King every year for Black History Month, the realities are there are so many other people to celebrate, so many other people that may not have lost their life, but they can show us how to also live like Frederick, who still has a house at a museum, who lived, to be older in age. Harriet Tubman, who lived older in age and was able to get her whole family out and also have a legacy that she continued to do work after abolition. So I kind of wanted to explore the stories of survival as well for our kids, because I think sometimes it can be traumatizing for our kids to keep looking at people that have been martyred. I think sometimes, without us realizing it, it's hard for them to kind of hear the same stories over and over. I wanted them to say, oh wow, he got older. Like in my play, I made sure Frederick was 27 years old, because I think it's important for our youth to see themselves. Something that you said, we haven't always been where we are now. We had a whole journey to go to. So Frederick Douglass at 27, hey, for some women, he may have been handsome. And so I know in my play, I mean, I had women were in the audience. Woo-hoo! I was like, y'all gonna be all right? Is everybody gonna be all right? But what I loved about it was, and same thing with Chevalier, very, very handsome, is that that's the humanity. Not only were they handsome, though, but they had substance, Terry.
Mhm.
See, that's what I wanted to talk about. Yes. I mean, they could turn heads. But at the end of the day, they got busy with the community. They got busy making sure that families had what they needed. They were
Mhm.
busy in understanding the world and how we needed to make contributions and make sure that things were fair for us. They were more than a pretty face.
Right.
And I think what's happening, a concern for me in entertainment, it's all about, because, let's talk about Frederick. He was the most photographed man in the 19th century. So we all about all these selfies, but where's that substance? So that's
Mhm.
kind of where I was so excited to write this play. So excited. Not only did Sancho write music, and he created the first music theory that got lost. Let's do
Mm.
that. This 1700s, okay? But he also wrote the dances. we are hilarious. We are so talented. They were like, listen, this is how you move to this dance. This is how you move to this song. Like, not only am I gonna write the music, but I'm gonna show you how to move to it.
Right.
And isn't that us today? We're such visionaries. So such a joy. I got to do it at the North Carolina Museum of Art, got to do it at a community center, St. Mark's Community Center. And I've just finished up at Carborough Century Center, who the mayor really enjoyed it. And so it felt really good. A lot of people said that they grew a lot of information they did not know about people like Frederick. I didn't know that part of Frederick's life. So I was hoping to do something different and make us dig a little bit, make us get engaged a bit more about the people that we don't hear about as readily, but dig even in the ones that we hear about. Maybe listen to a different speech of Martin Luther King, find
Mm-hmm.
out some other information. What was he like as a kid? Get into it. Don't just listen to sound bites, is what I'm trying to say.
I think it's imperative that we go beneath the proverbial surface.
Yeah.
And we have to be all about substance.
Yeah.
Because these are brothers, as you mentioned, not only were they fly brothers, but they were intelligent brothers. They were forward-thinking brothers. And we have to be the embodiment of that today. And there's no reason why we can't be, nor should we be. It's just that, to your point, we get so consumed with all of these other things that the media makes to be the thing that should be important in the eyes and minds of those in our community. And it really serves as a distraction. Because, I give an example. Let's talk TikTok for a moment. I interviewed somebody, he's from the intelligence community. One of the things he had shared with me is when you are going to influence a country, you do that through radio, you do that through the media. So TikTok, for example, when we turn on TikTok in America, it's who can do the newest TikTok dance, or what viral moment can you create? Whereas in China, where the app is actually headquartered, their TikTok is all about learning and teaching their kids. So the algorithm is set to something completely different. They're using TikTok in China as a vessel to teach their children. And they're using TikTok here, courtesy of the people in China, to entertain and distract us. So if I can keep you distracted, and chances are you have no idea what it is, what play I'm really running, because you're too busy distracted to even understand and realize that. So what I want to do, realizing that I have a media company, I've had one for 21 years, and I can talk about how we show up on the 6 o'clock news. I can talk about how we're depicted on Instagram and music videos, but I can talk and talk and talk, but it's really about what action are you going to put in place.
That's right.
What I want to do is I want to be all about amplifying us. To your point, not just the surface of which. When I met you guys, I was one of the executive producers for an entertainment news show. So if you weren't in film and television, unfortunately, we weren't trying to tell your story. And not just were you, if you were a person in film and television, you had to be somebody that the audience was going to know in 15 seconds. And if they didn't know you in 15 seconds, then chances are that story wasn't going to run. So for me, there was some guilt associated with that, because we're so much more than the person that you see on camera. We should celebrate anybody that's on the screen. We should celebrate the people who make it a reality to be on the screen. We should celebrate people not just in entertainment, but in other walks of life. So if you want to do something, then you have to be the one to do it. So that's what kind of led me to creating this platform. And to get spiritual with you for a moment, it was other people telling me how I should start a podcast, and I was reluctant to do it. And I choose to believe that was God messaging through other people and telling me how I need to walk in my purpose on purpose.
I love that.
And,
oh my gosh.
And so to hear you walking in your purpose on purpose is very refreshing, because to just hear you tell those stories of our ancestors, and to tell it in such an eloquent way that many of our viewers and listeners aren't going to be fully aware of the fact not only were these people freedom fighters, but they also had these skill sets and talents. So when you think of people, they were their version of LeBron James. There's always a debate about who's better, Michael Jordan or LeBron. But LeBron is a true Renaissance man, because not only is he about that action on the court, he's about that action in the community. And I can respect that, because I know where he comes from, because a friend of mine that I grew up with, he married somebody from Akron, and his father-in-law was actually like the de facto neighborhood father. So he told me everything that LeBron was going to do before it was even considered a possibility. And I'm not going to front. That was another time in which I was like, yeah, all right, I hear you. And to see what actually happened, like he had told me, man, he's going to have the people educate his team, and then his team, they're going to run those facets of business. I had never seen that before. And that's why it's imperative that we show people examples of who you can be rather than tell them who they can be. So since I had never seen that, and we're talking about a full-grown man when I was told this story, I didn't believe it because I had never seen it.
Right.
I believe it now because the person that was the usher at his wedding was Maverick Carter. So Maverick Carter is LeBron's business partner / manager, and Spring Hill is worth about $1 billion now.
Right.
And he's still playing. And then Rich Paul was somebody that was from around the way, and now he having not even gone to college, he's one of the most powerful agents in sports. And that's just what they're doing professionally. It's a whole nother chapter of what they're doing in the community. So we have to really educate ourselves as it relates to who our ancestors were, and then more importantly, who we can be present day.
I like what you're saying, because that's exactly the reason why I was inspired to write the play. Because if anybody sits and studies Frederick Douglass, that sounds to me what you just said about LeBron. When you study his character, what I loved about Frederick, and it sounds to me like what you're saying, is Frederick never ran from, Frederick always ran to. And what I mean by that is when he ran from something, like, okay, y'all chasing me, he already had a plan in his mind. When I get to such and such where I'm running to, I'm going to do a speaking engagement while I'm in Europe. I'm going to do this. He was making money. He was writing books. What I'm saying is, at a time in his life where he should have been like, the reason why I bring this up as we're talking about basketball, because what people don't know also is Frederick had people in sports. His family was in sports. I think about when people make the shot, when people are up close, or when it's the last bell. That was Frederick all day long. His whole life, he was being chased. He wasn't even free while he was writing books and published. What I'm saying is, how you gonna write a book and not be free, knowing that if they really gonna get you now because they mad. So He already had a book that he done published. He done go overseas. Somebody else wants to publish him while he's over there. So he's got money that he's making from over here, money he's making overseas. See the play I'm talking about?
Right.
So that
Now
sounds
he
like
want us to read. He writing books.
he just taught himself between this age and this age. And you said something very important too. When he was teaching himself how to read, while people thinking he was in church, there was 40 kids that he was teaching to read in church, right? So like you said, I'm moving with the community. You may not see what I'm doing, but I'm doing it. Another thing, these moves that you're talking about, it's beautiful what you just said, because that's exactly the reason why I wrote this. I'm like, if somebody just sits and studies this man, you're going to see some moves up in here. Frederick Douglass, his house was the last house on the Underground Railroad. So while he was doing his newspaper, so let's not even deal with the books. Let's talk about newspaper. We blog in the day, right? Got the pictures. He's the most photographed man in the 19th century, because when he walked in the room, he's passing you pictures. He understands the power of a photo. But the photos he was taking was abolition. See me as a man, not as a minstrel. And I think about him, and I wrote about him because I'm like, what would he think about these pictures we taking? I'm just saying, what would he think, knowing that he was fighting against minstrelsy, for us to be seen as human beings that had feelings and emotions, that we weren't these little Pikachus or whatever, characterizations they were giving us. And so that's why he took his photographs the way he took his photographs, because he was determined, you're going to see me as a man. You're going to deal with me as a man. His house was the last house on the Underground Railroad. And so they helped 400 slaves escape, all while he was doing the newspaper, all while he was published. But he didn't get free in America. He was all the way overseas, had to get his freedom from there and then come back. But what I'm trying to say is what you just said. Everybody thought that LeBron was all about this. He had a whole nother game plan. And that's the type of thinking. That's the type of character. That's where we need to be. We need to stop, like you said, we need to focus on those things that have longevity and have some girth to it, because all of this stuff, I mean, my mom always says pretty is as pretty does. And I think that stayed with me. I realized that, the worst thing looking thing, but I'm saying that's not how she raised me. She raised me that what it is about you on the inside should be so much greater than what's happening on the outside. So I think with all the technology is another thing I touched on in the play. Are we further along? We need to ask ourselves, are we, with all the technology that we have, with all whatever, look at all these things that these men have accomplished from the 1700s until now. A lot of us ain't scratching the surface. So we got to
Mm-hmm.
ask ourselves, how are we rating success? And that was one of the questions that I really am excited for people to get history in the play, but I'm also excited for them to see how we compare to the past. Because some people think, oh, that was in the past. I don't need to study that. We're doing new things now. Are we?
Right.
Are we further along?
Right. We moonwalking.
We moonwalking. What have you studied to assure you that we're further along than we were back then? If you study Tulsa, for example, and even though it was burnt to the ground, and it was unfair and it was not right. What did they amass in how short a period of time with all of the obstacles?
Mm-hmm.
But as long as we have the mindset that, hey, I'm doing my thing, you get what I'm saying? So
Right.
what is happening here?
We have to adopt a new mindset. We have to look at people from other communities who at one point in time were under attack. I've learned a lot from my Jewish brothers and sisters because at one point in time they were under attack, and to see how they pool their resources and see how they value their economic wherewithal. We need to have that same mindset. We need to have the mindset of understanding our superpower, and our superpower is our buying power and our creativity. One of the largest exports in America is entertainment, music in particular. We decide what's cool globally. And if we
So
say it's
true.
cool, then that's what it is. So we
That's
have to
it.
make it cool to have these conversations. We have to make it cool to understand our history. We need to make it cool to understand the commitment that we have to make to one another, if not for us, then for our children.
Yeah.
Because we have to see to it that we set them up to succeed, similar to how other communities set their children up to succeed. And you're doing it, Butter's doing it, I'm doing my part. And it just gives me such joy to have a conversation with someone like you and how you have that same mindset.
Yeah.
So as we close out, I wanted to give you the opportunity to leave our viewers and listeners with 3 things that you feel will help them prepare for takeoff.
3 things. Okay. Number 1, don't despise small beginnings. Forgive yourself. Don't beat yourself up as you're journeying where you're starting from. Believe me, you're going to finish well if you don't quit. So don't quit. So do not despise small beginnings. That might have been 2 in 1. And don't quit all in there, because sometimes you can look at where you're starting from and it feels like, it's never going to happen, because TV gives you this, you look at TV and it's like, they already got the dance moves. Do you know how long they practice that dance move before it comes across? So nobody appreciates practice. So I'll say that. Do not despise your small beginnings. You will end up where you want to be if you don't. Number 2, I would say make room for your dream. One of the things I can say that really blesses me about my husband is that we have footage of him at 13 producing. And I declare to you, from the time he was 13 up until now, I think Butter's setup is pretty much identical. He has a certain type of way. His table is set up a certain type of way. He wants to feel in his studio. And so even though it didn't have all the fancy equipment at 13, that's the way he carried himself. And I would say, if you have a dream, make room for it. Don't
Mm-hmm.
just wish. Don't just look at the TV and go, oh, I wish. Where are you making room for it? In your room, it could be a closet. If you want to produce, if you want to draw, make room for it. Take yourself seriously. And then third, I would say, for takeoff, do something for somebody else that you may never get anything back from. Because I think, I do believe when God says you can never outgive God. I think that when we give, whether that be, and I'm not talking about materials, just could be a listening ear. It just could be extra help. Like I remember at one point people were like, you bringing those kids up to your house? This is before we had kids. And I'm thinking, well, if this is our community. If we don't do these things, I don't know who else is going to do it. So I would just
Mm-hmm.
say, sometimes you got to be the change you want to see. So be the change you want to see. I don't know if that was like 5 in 1, but be the change you want to see. That's how I ended up writing the play. I was kind of feeling in my spirit like, I don't want to just talk about their music. I want to talk about their humanity. So the more I kept going to myself, it was like, what are you gonna do? It was like, oh, I guess it's me. So I would just say, most of the time, the thing you irritated about, go on do something about.
That's what I was saying earlier. You know, you can complain about the problems all day, but the real question is, how are you going to be part of the solution? A lot of people in our community, they're not as forthright as they should be with their blueprints on how
Yeah.
they succeeded. And the podcast gives us the opportunity to share people's blueprints on how they succeeded, how they prepared to take off.
I just want to say thank you to you too, because, just listening to you helping your mom out today just blessed me so much that you weren't too busy to give respect. And remember, that's your mom. That's off camera, people. This was before we even got on. Just being that person behind the scenes that somebody admires. Like, I really admire that. Was like, Mom, I'll call you back later. I'm about to, you know what I'm saying?
Right.
With care and consideration, because that's the woman that gave it to you.
Mhm.
And so I really appreciate your being consistent on and off camera, and also just having that longevity and thinking that I was important enough, because sometimes when you're quiet, people are just, you get passed by. So thank you for not overlooking a soul like me today.
It was an honor to give you all of your flowers. And I'm sure that many of our viewers and listeners, they're going to want to know, how can they get in contact with you? How can they follow you on social media? Is there a website? Anything you feel comfortable with sharing?
Sure. You can follow me at Trinity Cass01. So that's Trinity Cass01, which is Instagram. That's probably the best place to hook up with me. Or if you need to contact me, you can also email me at filmgirl1@icloud.com. That's film, like I'm writing a movie, girl, the number one, at icloud.com.
Trinity, thanks for spending so much time with us. We'll continue to cheer you on, whether you're in the Carolinas, you're on the West Coast, you're in Australia again. Just know we won't be far enough away to not cheer you on. We'll be cheering you on wherever we are, to just see that not only are you the embodiment of Black excellence, so too is your husband, so too are your children. You guys are a modern day version of the Huxtables.
Listen, that's a compliment. That's still my girl. Woo!
Right? Oh, look, you Claire all day.
Come on, Claire.
You
Woo!
are Claire all day.
Now that is a compliment. I will wear that well. Thank you, brother.
No problem. And speaking of thank yous, I wanted to thank our viewers and listeners, whether you're watching us on Spotify or YouTube, or whether you're listening on Amazon Music, Audible, Apple Podcasts, iHeart, or Pandora. As you know, every Wednesday, we're going to continue to bring you proven professionals or rising entrepreneurs. And all of these conversations, just like this one, will help you prepare for takeoff. Trinity, thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me. Bye, everybody. Thank you. This was awesome.